Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdist Dave, and today I'm joined by Andrew Cawood from Cawood Publishing. How are you doing today, sir?
Good man. How are you, Dave?
Good. I think you're closing in on like the most visits.
It's like being on SNL or something now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we love having you on. I love chatting with you, and you're always
Thanks.
doing cool stuff. So it's great to bring you on. But for anyone that's not familiar with Cawood Publishing, what the heck do you guys do?
Well, we make 5 products. Our main books that we publish are the Monster series, where there are 3 of those so far. And right now we're doing a Kickstarter for the 4th, Monsters of the Wilderness. And we also make the World of Mir setting. We have adventures. We have a podcast, and got lots of other projects coming up.
Um, this is the third monster book.
4th.
Fourth. I
Yeah,
wasn't sure.
we did Feyland, Monsters of Feyland, Monsters of the Underworld, Monsters of the City, and now we're doing Monsters of the Wilderness.
And Travis Hanson does all the art.
Yeah, Travis has worked with us on all these books and a few others as well. Yeah.
How far in
And
advance you
then
got to book Travis? I imagine he's pretty busy.
he's really busy, really, really busy. Yeah. I think actually sometimes he chats with me just so he can take a little bit of a break,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
we're both stay-at-home dads. We're both on the West Coast. So yeah, we chat quite a bit, and a lot of that time I think he's drawing at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of art that goes into your books too. So in
Yeah.
addition to like the other stuff that he's drawing, I'm surprised you guys are able to keep getting him time and time again.
Yeah, we're really happy that he can do that. And he said anytime we want to do one of these books, he's in.
Yeah.
You can see some of his art behind me for the background today. This is from the cover of the new book. And yeah, that's why these projects, they're not super cheap, because there's a lot of art. And we also have our books printed here in North America. We don't go overseas. So we try to make them as affordable as possible, but they're high quality books.
So how many pages are we looking at for Monsters of the Wilderness?
So this will be the biggest. The last one was 140, Monsters of the City, and this could be up to 160 pages, maybe even a bit more. And with the stretch goals, it could be 120 monsters. The Kickstarter is doing well, so that could increase as well.
So I remember, the last book I flipped through, I feel like there wasn't any pages without art. Like I don't remember opening anything and not having art on it.
Not many, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And man, how much of a struggle is that? Because I know, like with our book, we use two different artists, one for maps and one for art, and we put, you know, one of each with every encounter, plus some like extras. And I
yeah.
remember doing all the art directing for that, and what an endeavor, an undertaking that was. Who does your art directing? Do you do it, or do you have someone else?
Yeah, that we actually have a new person who joined us, Gordon McAlpin, who's
Yeah,
done a bunch of different layouts for us. So he worked with us for Monsters of the City. He did the graphic design, and then he did most of the art direction. And then I help a bit with that. Um, at the same time, Travis has a lot of room to express himself. You
yeah.
know, we hired him for a reason, because we love what he does. Same with Gordon. And yeah, it is a challenge to do it, but we think we've got a better system now, because Gordon and Travis work side by side. So Travis is actually illustrating into the space in the template, where before we'd finish the book basically and then put his art in. So I think the new books, Monsters of the City and the one we're making now, it looks much more dynamic, a much better layout.
Yeah. Were you relieved to be able to hand over that task, or do you miss it?
uh, I would prefer just to do the writing
Yeah.
with everything. So Yeah, it'd be nice at some point to get someone to do the social media work. Although I have, that's pretty fun at times. Um, yeah, I prefer just to do the writing and designing myself. Um, so as the team gets bigger, I don't mind handing off a few things. I have an extra editor this time, Sarah Bagshaw, who helped us a bit before.
The unsung heroes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'll help for sure.
Yeah. Well, when they do their job really well, like you don't know they're there. They're like, that's the
Yeah,
job of an editor.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so I know, like for me, like when we were working on our book and doing like all the directing, I found that really hard because I don't like being critical of people's work,
Mhm.
and I felt really self conscious about that. And also, like depending on the artist's process, like Kim's was really good, but I wasn't very good at looking at a sketch and understanding where it was going. I always needed to be further along. Thankfully, for most of the stuff, I was able to be like really light touch. It was more like, hey, let's mix in some people of color, or let's make sure some of our monsters are also female. And
Mhm.
hey, can you cover that half orc's butt more? So
Yeah, 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 yeah. I had discussions this time with Travis about the Snoger, but
yeah,
I rarely actually. We've done together. Let's see, the first three books are over 300, and then this will be another possibly 120. So, talking to him about, well, for sure the first 300 for the other books. I only ever gave him notes maybe seriously 3 or 4 times about
yeah.
tweaks because again, I love what he does, and as an artist myself, I don't want too much too much control. I want to be able to create. So I try to let Gordon and Travis have the same freedom. I really want to let him loose. I don't want to, I want to make sure that he feels he can do what he wants to do.
I didn't know you're an artist as well.
Well, I just mean in general, like to me,
Creative. Yeah, creative.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I do a little bit of like abstract art, but
Yeah.
I'm not anywhere in the realm of Travis or a professional artist.
We were
But
about
a
to have a
creative.
discussion about your unpainted minis.
Is that already in the chat?
No, no, not yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm all for your unpainted minis anyway. It was time for that. Uh,
Yeah.
so how are your D&D games going, or whatever you're playing these days?
Um, Pretty good. Yeah, I have a change now as my weekly game. That group has decided to play only twice a month,
Okay.
um, and which has allowed me to add another group.
Oh, nice.
So now I'm going to be doing 2 games a month with my old group, who we've been running for over 5 years now. And then the new group, I'm going to start running once a month at least. And that one, because of our current situation, they're actually all online and they're all over Western Canada. And the funny thing about that campaign is I let them choose whatever characters they want
Uh-huh.
and tell them a little bit about the world of Mir. But each guy chose a dwarf. So the party is 4 dwarves.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So yeah, we actually start this Sunday. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
That usually that's something that people plan, but they just like showed up with 4 dwarves.
Well, I think we had 3, and then then when the new guy joined, everyone was like, "You got to have a dwarf."
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure the first 3 chose them themselves, and then they were considering having a halfling burglar
Yeah.
with them, to keep with the classic story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I put the kibosh on that and said, no, we're not going to do that story.
We're not doing that story. Somebody already did it.
Yeah, so it's 4 dwarves, which yeah, it should be interesting, and all men. Where my other party is very diverse.
Yeah.
Actually, there's more females in my other party than men. So yeah, it's going to be it'll be a different kind of group for sure.
Less rowdy.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. The women in my games always seem to get rowdier than the men.
I do have one person in my group, actually two, who are seriously into combat and just want to crush
Yeah,
whatever is around, and those are in my regular group. Um, yeah,
work out
I'm
some
sure the new
aggression.
group. Sorry.
They need to work out some aggression.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody needs to do that at times.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and the new group is going to be really old school. Yeah, they're an older group for the most part. I'm sure they'll like hearing that.
But on Saber Dice, the one season we did play, it was three halflings and a dwarf, so we kind of went like the other way.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
It
the one
wasn't a dwarf.
player effed it all up by not being a halfling as well, and we're playing as cousins, so it was a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
fun.
yeah. It wasn't a dwarf rogue, was it?
No, no, no. I think this is a dwarf cleric.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
useful.
yeah, yeah. It was an interesting campaign because that character went down a dark character arc. He like, I think, I think he ended up like murdering his wife, and then someone else gets murdered later in the game, and then they're like, when someone else was kind of describing it to the rest of us, it's like, well, kind of Gregor her or them because because the name of the dwarf that was the murderer, and that character also ended up like getting arrested and executed for that as well because you can't murder hobo.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, yeah. I'm the same in my game. There are definite consequences, and there are no evil PCs. We did that when we were kids, and
yeah,
yeah.
it never usually ends well.
No, it breaks the game. The game is designed for, 4 or 5 heroes to work together. As soon as you're not working together, you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's very rare
Maybe
that I've
maybe
seen it pulled
briefly.
off.
Yeah, I think briefly you can split the party, but too long, you're not going to have a party left.
I always liked like the one evil character in the group
Hmm.
that could work okay. And if like 80-90% of the time they worked with the group and for the group, like
Hmm.
that 10 to 20% of the time, they were doing things behind the scenes.
Hmm.
I've had that work out okay in the past. It depends on, but you need players that are like not going to be a-holes
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
with the work. Yeah. So all of the games are D&D then, I take it?
Yeah, I haven't had enough time to explore other games. When I started playing in the late 70s, early 80s, I also played Star Frontiers.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually quite interested in looking at Traveler. And there was just a big sale actually. So I have a bunch of Traveler PDFs that I've been looking through because Travis and I have talked about doing a sci-fi RPG,
Yeah.
classic, kind of a classic style, maybe something like the uh, Aliens movies and Traveler, sort of inspired by those. So we'll see where that goes. Because I am a big sci-fi fan as well.
Yeah, I mean Travis's art with some sci-fi would look fantastic for sure.
Hmm.
So right
Yeah.
now, are all your players going through wildernesses?
Um, Let me think. One group, they just arrived in the Underdark.
Yeah.
And a lot of our books, like many of the monsters in the Wilderness book, you're going to be able to use in other settings. So a number of those could be in the Underdark. In fact, they are, because this is where I play test the monsters. The other group, the campaign is just starting on Sunday, and they are starting in the wilderness. They're starting in a forest on their way to a city. I usually have a combination of urban, wilderness, and then and I definitely still do dungeon crawling. So all of these books that we make are the kind of creatures and the kind of settings that I personally would use.
What's your favorite from the new book?
My favorite new monster,
Yeah.
um, the one I think there's a lot. The one I think of right away is the Grim Rock, which one of my favorite regular creatures is the Rock. the the archetypal giant bird creature, who
Okay,
are
yeah,
just nasty. And I thought, you know what? I can make these worse. I can make these even more horrifying by having an undead version,
yeah,
which shoots rays out of its eyes, has like, turn resistance and a bunch of other resistances and immunities. So it is a nasty piece of work.
the evil eagle eye. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I call it the evil eagle eye.
yeah. It's one of the ones you have up on the Kickstarter page. I'm looking at.
Yeah, yeah,
Which folks, you can check out the art and see what's going on over there. The links in the description as always. Yeah, it kind of has this like vulture look to it.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
good.
So I give like a little bit of a description, usually not super detailed, but the basics to Travis,
Yeah,
and then he runs with it. And he does a sketch. I look at the sketch, and like I said, 99% of the time, I'm like, that is amazing. And
yeah.
and then he does an ink version, and then he does the final color version. The other one I think of right away is the kind of the star of the show for the Kickstarter page is the Ragnar, which is this massive Titan. I think it's kind of unique, but it's a little bit like combining a Tarrasque with a T-Rex with a Stegosaurus and then putting it in a snowy continent.
Yeah.
That one is pretty wild. I had when I came up with that, I had an immediate image of this huge Titan racing across a glacier, chasing this herd of snow cattle, which I thought I'll create and I'll put in the book as well. And when Travis did the art, it was one of those times where not only did I like it, but it was so close to what I had imagined.
Yeah.
And that thing is because our campaign, I used this creature probably 2 years ago for the opening scene when the adventurers arrived. They actually arrived on an airship on a northern continent, and I wanted to have them see something below that was an introduction to this new continent, and that was the opening scene, was this Ragnar chasing this herd.
I like the Ankylosaurus or the Ankylosaurus tail on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Uh,
and as the little funny things sometimes happen with your creations in terms of what becomes popular. If you look at those little creatures that the Ragnar is chasing, a whole bunch of people said, "Oh, those are adorable." I
yeah.
I would love to have one of those. Like, could I get that as a mount? Is it in the book?
Yeah.
And yes, it is in the book. Yeah.
How big are they supposed to be for scale?
I'm pretty sure they are large, so you can imagine how big the Ragnar is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This Black Stag is a great piece of art. I love the way it's all like muted colors and the blacks, but then you just have the red that really pops.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how Travis is still tweaking. Like he tries totally new styles of art all the time.
Yeah.
If you look at his daily comic, his Life of the Party comic, the style is more cartoony and the characters are rounder. When he does our art, usually he's doing a slightly more realistic, kind of stretched out version, kind of similar to his Bean comic that he did before. Just
Yeah.
a bit more of that style. And then sometimes he tries completely new things. And I think part of that you can see with the Black Stag.
Yeah, it definitely looks fantastic and pops. And then also, I'm loving the giant sand shark.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It looks like it kind of combines like shark and worm-like features.
Yeah, that actually was one of the few times I did talk to him and we adjusted because he basically had a shark coming out of the desert sand.
Yeah.
And I said, it's a bit more of a monster. It definitely has shark qualities, but there's other parts to it.
Yeah.
So then he went back and kind of tweaked it, and I really like what he came up with for sure.
Yeah, it's sharp. He's a fantastic artist. I mean,
amazing.
You did well in scoring Travis and getting him to do all of your books.
Yeah, we're very pleased. A real good connection there for sure.
Yeah, we had him on when we used to do these before and talked a little because I'm also a fan of the comic that he does. Although I don't see it as often as I used to because I always see it on Facebook. So,
and you're not on Facebook as much
at all. My account got hacked and banned. So it is not recoverable. That. And being in the US, it's really hard to get a new Facebook account. It's like you have to. I looked into it. Like you can't just make one because in the US they make you use your phone and they make you use an email address. So like I feel like I would have to get like I'd have to get like a burner phone for it to have a Facebook account. Wow. Which is a bit much. Or the option was use a VPN, a virtual machine, and create an account in the EU where they protect your privacy a bit more, so you don't need to give them as much information.
Yeah, it's not ideal. We've had a few ads rejected there because Facebook told us that RPG stood for rocket propelled grenade.
Oh yeah. I remember my brother-in-law telling a story. He was in the military and in the reserves, and he was stationed in Iraq for a while about RPGs. And Ted was much younger at the time, and like he instantly thought of gaming, not grenades or explosives. So you mentioned you have another group which it's like that's what me and Ted will do a lot of times is we have like a bunch of different groups that we play with but less frequently, which is kind of nice because it gives you like a mix of games and players. And where did you find your where did you find your new group?
My new group are actually people I all met online. One of them is here in Vancouver, and again, another dad, kind of my age.
Yeah.
And he also started playing. Actually, I think all four guys started playing when you and I started playing early on. So they played D&D for a long time, and they all like kind of the older style game where it's really challenging, which is basically how I run it. I kind of, I play more classic fantasy, and then I make it very challenging. I'm not trying to kill everybody, but I make it really challenging. So it feels, I think, more like first edition in some ways. So one of the guys is here in Vancouver, and we were just chatting on Twitter. Another guy I met on Instagram, which has been a huge growth platform for us. He's in BC here in Canada as well. And then there's another guy on the island here who I met on Twitter as well. And then another guy on Instagram. So all people I met online, and they were guys that I talked to all the time. They were people who constantly commented on our pages, and all people who we seem to be all on board, and
so were they kind of like fans and customers?
Yeah, most of them. And they all liked, they could see, because on Instagram, sometimes on Twitter and Facebook, we have pictures up or videos up of our game. So they got a good feeling for what the game is like. And I think a couple listened to the podcast. So they know what they're getting themselves into. And before I run the game, I always do a Facebook page where we all meet and chat and we talk about rules. And as far as the game, really the only rule that I change is critical hits and critical misses. We have extra effects in my games. That's pretty much the only thing I change. Almost everything else's rules is written.
So yeah, I was going to ask if you did anything different to make it more challenging. So that's all through play style, not so much like using grittier rules or anything.
Yeah, I'd say I make it more challenging by um, definitely the extra effects, because some of them are quite severe. And if you roll the extreme rolls on either end for a critical hit, it's an auto kill. It's pretty low chance because of the way our system, but it has happened in my group before. Um, and then I like waves of monsters too, which is always a challenge.
Yeah,
Um, and Yeah, and there's a lot of complexity. Like they might meet someone who they trust for a year in the campaign, and then that person ends up trying to blow them up one day at a tavern or something, right? So um, the players have to be on their toes, and they need to have backup characters.
what is the percentage of the insta kill?
Oh, it's really low. Like what we do, and we tried it. We play tested this for a long time. So originally we rolled. If you got a crit or a crit miss, you rolled a D8, and if it was, and if you rolled an 8, then we would roll for extra effects. And we found
Okay.
that happened so infrequently, it didn't work. So we went all the way down D8, D6, D4, and then we settled on a yes/no dice. So
Yeah.
now it's a 50% chance that we go to the extra table. And then the extra table, I have a D120. So I have a chart with 60, or maybe I have 120. Anyway, I've got like 100 results. And if you
Yeah.
roll a 1 or a 120 on the D120, that's the auto kill. So it's rare, but it's happened. It's
So it's
probably
like,
happened. Yeah, it's happened 4 or 5 times, I think, in the last 3 years.
I mean, it's a 5%, 50%, and then 10%. I don't know how those average out.
Yeah, it's really unlikely, but with advantage, and with the fact that I have a lot of combat, it's not unheard of. And I think of those 4 or 5 auto deaths, like auto kills, probably 2 were NPCs. So it was only maybe 2 or 3 characters who that's happened to.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So
So and
bring your backup character.
bring it. Yeah. I'm not going to kill somebody first or second level. I will find a way usually to not have that happen. I usually don't make it like, ridiculously tough. But once
Yeah.
you're third level and higher, all bets are off.
Make sure they love the character a little bit, then murder them.
Well, to me, it's up to the dice. So
Yeah.
I never try. I'm rooting for them. I'm making it really challenging, but I'm still 100% rooting for them, because I want I want the monsters defeated. So um, yeah.
So how many combats do you generally run in a session?
Um, well, for sure, there's at least 1 or 2 knockdown, drag 'em out fights, like deadly fights.
Yeah.
And then there's, you know, maybe 1 or 2 hard ones, and then, another, 1 to 3 kind of medium level ones. I don't even bother with the easy ones. That tells you what kind of DM I am. I don't even have them. Yeah, so there's quite a few. We play for about 3-4 hours, my regular group. This new group, we're playing a little bit shorter. But there's quite a bit of combat. I still love role playing. I love exploring. But to me, there's got to be action
Yeah.
for a good story. There's got to be action.
So you've gotten in like 3 to 8 combats in a session?
Yeah, and like 2 or 3 of those might not be really tough.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of action for sure.
Well, on that note, do you have tips for people to make combats move faster? Do you do anything to speed things up?
Um, yeah, I think I just what I do in general is especially those easier fights, like the medium kind of level fights. If the fight is done, like you can tell the players are done with the fight and they're going to for sure, overcome this
Mhm.
adversary, then I might tweak hit points of the monsters, lower them so that it can finish quick.
Yeah.
Um, because you can tell when it's a game. We're supposed to be having fun. So if people are getting bored, or if it's obvious that this is they have overwhelming odds and it's not a major fight, then I often will wrap those kind of fights up early.
Yeah.
And then I really do move it, and I expect everybody to be, really paying attention. There's no phones at our table. It's a little bit different now with
Yeah. Yeah.
with being online. I'm
They
not
might
going
be
to
playing from their phone.
exactly. I'm not going to police people when they're playing at home, online, especially in the current circumstances.
Yeah.
I'm going to be really patient. But at my table, there's no phones, no laptops. Everybody should be paying attention. And I just move it really quickly. I have the initiative order on the back of the DM screen.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and if people aren't ready, then I encourage them. I was a teacher a long time, so I'm good at encouraging people to move it along. But yeah, and I have no problem with 5e. I don't like, as far as the mechanics of the system, I don't find it slow at all. Yeah, and I think it's just finding the right balance of what they're fighting. You know, again, some of those fights should be not too tough. And then you do want to have, usually I think every session, you want to have at least one big fight, usually at the conclusion of the night. Sometimes I also have another one at the beginning. I kind of bookend it.
Right.
And it's rare that I'll have a really big fight kind of right in the middle. I like to build up the game.
And how many rests usually occur during a session?
It depends how far the party is traveling.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're not traveling a great distance. So I'd say it really varies, but I guess an average session, they might have 1 or 2 short rests and maybe 2 or 3 long rests.
Okay.
And then if they're traveling, sometimes they're traveling a fairly big distance, then it could be, maybe 3 or 4 short rests and 5 or 6 long rests if they're traveling, a much bigger distance.
So they're resting up pretty good between encounters a lot of times.
Yeah, because often the big fight, which is usually at the end, I want to make sure that it's a fair fight. Sometimes if they've made a bad decision, like not resting up before, if there's an obvious way they can rest before entering the final battle, sometimes I'll let that go and they're just going to have to deal with the consequences. But usually I set it up so that they have a way to recover. Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious because it's a very different play style than we play. We'll do 1 to 3 combats in a session, and 2 and 3 are kind of rare. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
It's a lot of role playing and exploration.
Yeah.
And us meandering about. So I find if in earlier games we used to play like that a lot more.
Yeah.
So I was really curious about pacing and how you handle the resting. We tend to do tougher encounters as well, but because we do less of them, and we're the players are going to go Nova anyway. It really helps some of those classes that are more resource dependent, like the monk. So it's they're going to run out of their resources, but they're not going to need them, so it's not as bad.
Yeah, I really like when I play, which I don't get to do that much, but when I play, I usually play paladins and wizards. Those are
Yeah.
usually my go-to classes. And so I really feel for the wizard. So I want to make sure that they're that they have, that they can actually do what they're made to do in that big fight, as opposed to, they have like one or two spell slots left, and
Yeah.
now they're entering the big dungeon chamber. Have fun,
You
you
know,
know.
it's better than the old days though.
It
Like,
is.
before you were done with your spells and you had like a dagger.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to use it. Then it kind of got elevated and you're using a crossbow. So now at least you can always cast magic.
Yeah, you've got cantrips there no matter
Uh,
what.
and also like the ritual spells, I really think rounded out nicely too. So like if you're not in combat, you still have cool magic-y things you can do, even if
Hmm.
you've gone through all your slots for the day.
Hmm.
Brian has a question. I've recently run into some friction between players about loot. Once the combat is done and there is treasure to be found, how do you determine who gets what if they're fighting over it? Trial by
That's a good,
combat.
yeah, that's a good question. I think the best way to handle that is to decide beforehand how the party works. So I think in general, there's two ways. You either decide that automatically the party is going to share the treasure. If you've agreed upon that rule, then there's not going to be an issue. The other option is that you've decided that it's basically first come first serve,
uh,
finders keepers, and then there might be some friction. So um, I think it depends on what you've decided. I think the friction can work. It can work as long as the players know how to do it. But if you're having lots of conflict, I would say you revert to the automatic sharing the treasure, and that people have to agree upon that in the game. That's the way that I would deal with it.
yeah, I mean, in general, when you get together with a group, you should kind of have conflict resolution in place beforehand, right? Because once there's a problem, it's like kind of too late. And
Yeah.
I must say that we're not always great about that, and that definitely makes you think of that. Like in particular, like you said, like the group should kind of have an agreed method before you even start, and then once you have the agreed method, if there is a conflict that arises, how are you going to deal with it? Do you
Yeah.
vote? Do you roll off? For our groups, it's always been kind of easy because, like in our groups, we always looked at magic items as like how does it make the party better.
Right.
So it's like, well, who needs this or who's going to use it the best and make the
Yeah.
overall party better, and
Yeah.
and we would just generally give out items that way as a group. um but I can definitely see I've definitely played with other groups where it wasn't like that so much. And one of my more recent groups, it's like, one player is holding the magic item that is actually best suited for the other player, and they're not even using it. But it's like the other player had already gotten a bunch of stuff, so the other players were like, "Well, I want stuff too."
Yeah.
It can
Yeah.
be, it can be challenging. But I think, like you said, is the best. Is like beforehand, you have to figure out what is your method for divvying up stuff, and this could be like even a role playing thing, like when the group forms.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not into session zero. I don't really understand the point of that, but
Uh,
I think it's a good idea to talk beforehand. Or what we do is we have a Facebook page where we talk about, what will the game look like, what changes are we going to make, and then once we've agreed upon all that, then we have a group and then we
well,
have a game.
that is a
But
session zero. Like,
well, no, but what I mean is that we
yeah,
do that, and that's a matter of minutes
yeah,
to me. Like, it's a really, really quick process. And then when we start playing, we can just start playing. It's just a game. We
yeah.
can we can just start playing right away. Like, I think that setting the rules and setting what style, if you don't like what the group's doing, then you need to find another group. Like, it's just a game. Like, if you know, if you don't want to play with that and play in that group, play in another group. So I think we just start, after making our basic rules, we just go, level 1, let's go.
Well, I mean, when we've talked about session 0, we've talked about it in those terms. Like, it could be as simple as you described it, or it could be like everyone gets together and makes up character. And it also depends too, like what the group looks like. Like, I feel it's good when you have a group of people that don't know each other to get together and kind of hang out in that session 0 and talk about the stuff you did, and then connect characters and kind of like get to know each other. And it even could be like, well, it's session 0/session 1 where you do that, and then you do a short session, that you attached.
Yeah. To me, that's just session 1.
Yeah. But all those methods are valid. But I do find if you go into a game without anything and people just all show up with their characters and you just start playing, about 50% of the time you run into problems.
Yeah.
In my experience, like I've definitely also seen GMs come around on session 0 after having their game implode. So, yeah, it's the preventative measures, right? When they work, you don't necessarily see what they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, like I said, we've talked about that before, where like this could just be a Discord thing or a Facebook Messenger thing, and then everyone's on the same page when you get started.
Yeah. I also feel though that there's an expectation sometimes these days that everything needs to be perfect and there can never be any conflict and nothing will ever come up and my life will be just how I want it. Well, it doesn't work like that. And people can talk things out, reasonable people can talk things out and, figure out a way when things come up, because things will come up. Even if you have house rules, even if you have a mature group, nobody's perfect, and things will happen and you can talk out. It's okay.
I will concur. I mean, I've played over the past, like, I guess going on 30 years, I've played with a lot of different groups and a lot of different things have come up.
Mm-hmm.
Fights, threats.
Yeah.
Someone's teeth flying out and landing on the center of the table.
I had 2 players quit because their characters just got the what kicked out of them.
Oh yeah.
And that hurt their ego so much they couldn't handle it. That's over playing for a long time.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I do know that those 2 players, that's why they quit, because their character, either one of their characters just got a paladin who just got beaten up really bad. He didn't die actually, and then the other guy whose character didn't survive, and both of them, that was just too much for them.
Yeah, Brian Smith, there seems to be a lot of unreasonable people popping up lately. Hashtag flat earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the funnier moments at our table was when one of the players went to say something and we didn't know that they had like a top plate.
Oh, okay.
And he was like a young guy, wasn't like old or anything, flew out of their mouth and landed in the dice tray, in the center of the table. It's like dead silence. You can hear a pin drop for a moment. Apparently he had all of his teeth knocked out in a BMX accident when he was a kid.
Wow. Yeah, things can happen when you have people you don't know that well. We had our regular group. We used to bring in part-time players sometimes.
Yeah.
And one player, his first night, the only night he played with us, the group had actually arrived outside this cave where they knew these giants were living, and they were all preparing to go in to do combat because it's my game, so there's fighting.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to talk to the giants. So anyway, they were getting ready, and it came to this person's turn, and he said, "Okay, for my turn, I changed my clothes." And everybody kind of looked at him like, really? That's your action? And then we were like, okay, like, that's a one-time thing or whatever. The next turn, he said, I cleaned my sword because it was dirty from my last fight. I spend my turn cleaning my sword. Yeah. So he didn't play with us again.
Yeah, that's so people are weird like that sometimes. And like it's like they just want to they just want the attention, it feels like, right? Because they're like doing their own thing and they want everybody to know they're doing their own thing. I'm like, this is a group activity. You really should come to do the things with the group.
Yeah.
It's also like it's the same player that's like, my character wouldn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the game is about cooperation. So, and that's with the characters and with the players.
So they're making jokes about being Canadian DMs in the chat. But I imagine a lot of people don't know that you're actually just, in Canadian, you're like a wolf in sheep's clothing, really.
Yeah, exactly. A Canadian wolf, or I guess South African wolf in Canadian sheep's clothing. That works perfect.
Yeah.
Lots of, because sheep are, well, my accent, almost all my accent was gone because I moved here fairly young.
Yeah.
And and I do love Canada. I do love, it's funny that our game in Vancouver, there's a bunch of different people involved in 5th edition and RPGs, and everybody just does almost everybody does their own thing. And whereas I know other communities where everyone's working together, like for example, the Seattle community, pretty much the same people who work at the main company work at the third-party companies, and they move back and forth. It's not the same here in Vancouver. So yeah, hopefully that will change in the future.
Get a base of operation, centralized.
Yeah, well, it's funny, like other groups that we work with, like we team up sometimes with Limitless Adventures, who are based out of Illinois, a small group, and another group, Loke Battle Mats, who are out of the UK.
Yeah.
And of course, Michael Mordor, the miniature painter, who's in Scotland. So we're kind of, working with different people all over. We were just helping Tribality a bit. They have a new Kickstarter out for their Seas of Vidari. And our philosophy is, hey, we'll help you, you help us, we'll work together. We're all in this together. As people get more successful, it helps build the industry. And just like every culture, some people think all these little subcultures are always perfect. Every culture has a lot of the same issues. So there are companies that do not work together, do not promote each other, and do interesting things behind the scenes, as I'm sure you'll know.
Yeah, well, and the thing about that is it's a very small industry. So like you can only do that for so long before everyone knows who you really are.
Exactly.
So Limitless, that's Andy, right?
Yeah, Andy Hand, yeah.
Yeah, we tried to get him on the show, and he's like, I'm not that interesting. I don't have that much stuff to say. Like, what do you mean? We talk for hours at conventions all the time. It's going to be just like that.
Yeah. No, he's a good guy to talk to. They make pretty good 5th edition resources. Definitely things that I've used in our game. Where I think there's a lot of great ideas out there, but they're not all really practical at the table.
Yeah.
For me as a DM, all those cards, I do like, I think it was the Deck of Many who made the new Deck of Many Things, which is my favorite magic item.
Yeah.
So I love having that. Like I have that at my table.
And they also do the holographic cards, and they do a bunch of stuff now.
Yeah.
They're like RPG millionaires.
Yeah. For me personally, too much of the like cards and some of that stuff, it's not practical behind the DM screen or even on the camera. Whereas I don't mind having a few books, especially monster books.
Spell cards are like super useful, but I always forget to bring them.
Mhm.
so, so I guess not quite as useful, but I mean, it is kind of nice that you can build your spell book or whatever and put out what you have. It's like really quick reference.
Yeah, yeah. For a player, spell cards I think is pretty cool. I have one player. She loves them. She has. I think she's bought every spell card there is
Yeah, cool.
for every class.
Are there any particular aids that you like to use as a GM or player?
Um, as a player, no. I have my character sheet, a pencil,
Yeah.
um, and my dice. I'm super old school. But as a DM, yeah, I'd love, as I said, Loke battle mats, just a really good quality. And then the Pathfinder battle mats that Paizo makes. People know that if they see my Instagram because
Yeah.
they're constantly there. And then
That and your unpainted minis.
yeah, yeah, and then yeah, we're huge fans of Reaper miniatures, and I like the old uh, classic style. I think maybe part of it is I don't have time to paint them too.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm just bringing your stones. Do you
Yeah.
prefer pewter over plastic?
Oh, for sure, pewter.
Yeah. You still
Although
get those?
oh yeah, Reaper still has the old school ones. I still buy them. I have had some really nice plastic ones given to me by followers recently. Um, there's a Frogamoth I just got, which even though it's
Yeah.
plastic, I might have to use it because it's so well done.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, and then of course dice. Um, but I'm pretty basic. Like I'm like notebook, post-its, pencil, dice. um, yeah, and resource books. I'm starting to get into 3D terrain, although that is a challenge with space.
It
Um,
is.
so we'll have to see. We're looking at finding a bigger place. So if that
So,
happens,
so Gareth from DMG Info, also a fellow countryman of yours, before he moved to Australia, he's been
yeah.
playing with this new stuff with terrain built for online gaming,
Oh yeah.
where it takes into the account, the C930, 920 that everyone uses.
Hmm.
And it's like almost like side scroller. And like there's a cutout where the
Oh
camera, and
yeah.
it's actually the shot from the camera. So it's a side view, it's not the
Yeah.
top down view. And
Yeah.
like, a lot of his terrain, like he builds it for functionality. And like because he used to do he called it the 2.5 terrain, where it's like the flat cardboard, and you would build all this. But he's like, I'm not playing in person anymore. Like I haven't been, even before the panic, I haven't been. All my games are
Yeah.
online. So it's like I don't have a passion to make this stuff anymore. And so he came up with this new method of doing it that takes into account, gaming online. And
Yeah.
I'm not even into terrain and doing that stuff, but I like to see what he does and the stuff that
Right.
he's coming up with.
Yeah. Actually, I just did see that recently, which I want to look into more. I love
Yeah.
that idea. I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
It's like I always love to see like cool, innovative things
Hmm.
that people come up with. And I guess like the timing, his timing for releasing it is really good too, just because, well, everything that
Yeah.
everyone's gaming online, and maybe you don't
Yeah.
want to use a VTT, you want to use terrain and minis, so this is just kind of like another way to do that.
Yeah.
Like that's what Ted's doing. Like, is that what you do as well? Like, have the terrain set up and just set up another camera?
Right now, we just have one camera that we move to the DM and then to the table.
Yeah.
But yeah, we set up the table as if it's a game at the table. And I think one of the reasons I like the 3D stuff, I got some of it at Christmas and started using it more, is because it pops out a little bit more on the screen when we're on Zoom. And but I like it to be as close to the normal game as possible. So I'll try to get an extra camera And that we will actually, for this Kickstarter, we're going to do a couple of monster battles where people fight with creatures from all the books.
Oh, nice.
And we'll do that with a VTT, with a dungeon master I know in Montreal, Pat. He's going to run the VTT side, and then I'll have the camera on myself too, running the game, and we'll kind of combine it. But in general, for my game, I like using the battle mats, using the miniatures, keeping it as real as possible.
GM Tim is a fantastic Canadian dungeon master. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, I do know Tim. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah,
he was my DM at the first D&D in a castle.
Oh yeah.
He was a blast to have run games for us.
Yeah, I love his enthusiasm for the game. That's always good.
So, yeah, he's definitely a good dude. I remember like him and James had cooked up a kind of like a contest of champions between their tables, and so we had to battle each other. And my character was kind of specced out, and he just looked at the other team. He's like, "I'm so sorry."
How did you do in that?
How did we do, or how did we do it?
How did your character do?
Oh, he did really well because he was a halfling archer battle master. And I just saw the biggest, meatiest character, their barbarian. I'm like, oh yeah, all my attacks and action surge, and I'm just using everything to knock that character back. Because they started us off kind of far away.
Yeah.
Then they finally got up to the rest of us, and then then the wizard put a wall of force around them. so they couldn't do anything. It was fun, but then they would have like effects happen during the battle and wipe away our magic and stuff, so that the players could get back into it.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a lot of fun, and they also ran it very well, and it was like a Coliseum style, but there was a lot of like extra terrain that would pop up, and every round the announcer would come in and add something new feature to the battlefield to make it more interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's another, area that I always love for games is the terrain. The setting is always a big deal to me. It's basically another character.
Yeah.
And I always try to bring many different, settings and terrain for the party.
So for the new book, like the city book kind of had like a story kind of going on with it. Right. Is this more like a traditional monster book, or do you have a through line?
We decided once again to have a narrative built in, a story there. So this book is about a very famous character from our world of Mir, Oswald. He's this crazy wizard. And you'll find out in the book he had an even crazier family. And basically, he's done experiments and magic that's pushed the boundaries of reality and unleashed a curse on the land. So most of the monsters in the book are either creatures that came through portals that have been opened because of this curse, or they're creatures that have been turned undead. Like, for example, the Grim Rock, which is the undead rock version, or strange energies have affected them. Like we have a giant octopus, but it's made out of coral. So the AC is through the roof, and it's got other resistances. It's not an easy opponent. So the main story is about this wizard who's affected the whole world, and he's being kicked out of the Wizard Council. So each region of the book, there'll be 7 wilderness regions. Each region has one of the wizards from the Wizard Council, and a Titan that these wizards are connected to. So in the Arctic, there's the Ragnar, which is on the Kickstarter page, and that Titan is connected to this witch, who's part of the Wizard Council. And as you read through the book, you'll also end up finding Oswald's stat block and his history and his parents, and you'll learn that actually the real curse again as his family, which is why he is who he is today. So there's a really strong story, and it's also connected right into our world of Mir. You don't have to have the setting, but if you do, you can use that lore as well.
Nice. I know, like in Creatures of the Feywild, there was a lot, like there wasn't a through line, I believe, but a lot of the creatures themselves just had a lot of cool hooks to them built in their descriptions.
Yeah, we didn't have a big narrative tying things together. But we had the different courts of the Fae. So there's the good court, the evil court, and then the wild, kind of chaotic, neutral, wild Fae. And then in Underworld, we had this story where you kind of had to dig for it a bit, but there was, and it's tied into the new book, where these dark energies have come into the Underworld, and now they're starting to infect lots of creatures with spores throughout the whole Underworld. So the drow are getting infected, and the dwarves are getting infected. And then the city book, we had the sins and virtues. This time we have this curse.
So does that make it more entertaining for you as the writer?
Oh, 100%. This story of this wizard is one of the ways that I help build out our setting. Mm-hmm. And his actions have affected the whole world. So this is one of the most fun stories. Actually, our designer, the graphic designer, Gordon, came up with an idea of putting in notes from Oswald's workbooks, from his spell books, and his all the experiments and magic he's been doing. So scattered throughout the book, there'll be these passages, and you'll start to tie together, why he did what he did, what are the consequences, who his family is, and then what he's going to do to try to rectify this. And he's right here over my shoulder, right there.
Oh yeah.
And you can see the my lockdown beard. I'm starting to cosplay him as well.
He looks a little bit like a deranged Gandalf.
Yeah. He's the archetype of the crazy wizard or the mad scientist.
Yeah.
And I love playing with that archetype, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it would appear Wizards of the Coast has left that one behind a bit. Because it used to be like every weird thing was the crazy wizard did it. And now, like in 5e, they spent a lot of times going like, well, if the crazy wizard didn't do it, how could it have happened? Which, I mean, they've come up with some really great like lore and stories from that. we still need one or two crazy wizards to do it.
Yeah, they've definitely leaned into the evil witch, or the witch who can be, saved, or so yeah, there's some classic archetypes that we'd like to still explore, for sure.
Nice. Well, we are up on the hour. It always goes by so fast. Final thoughts before we head out?
I'd just like to thank you for having us on again, and people can check out Monsters of the Wilderness on our website. We're about 65% funded after a week, 3 weeks to go, so in good shape. Yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations on getting this far so far. I can't wait till it gets funded. And until next time, everyone, stay nerdy. Remember, links are in the description.
Bye, guys.